Hi everyone. Today we have with us Advocate Priyadarshini Rahul, who has appeared recently for the Tiruchendurai village regarding the recent Waqf Amendment Act in Supreme Court. She's going to take us more into this case. She's going to share more insights about the case and the recent interim order passed by the Supreme Court. Hello, ma'am. Hi.
Hi.
Welcome to TFI Post.
Thank you.
Hello,
Thank you for having me over.
So let me start with my first question. That is, what does the recent SC interim order states? So there is a lot of ambiguity. There is a lot of news pouring in mainstream media and across social media. So can you brief us about the recent interim order of SC, ma'am?
Okay. First and foremost, the Supreme Court had made it very clear that a blanket stay is not required. A blanket stay is required only when there is an exceptional case where the constitutionality of the entire system is being questioned. So one, Supreme Court was convinced that there need not be a stay in toto. Second thing, there were certain sections where the Supreme Court wanted a little more clarification and where the stay has been given. So one of that is, the section 3C2, 3C3, 3C4, where they talk about the collector's role. Wherein, if at all there is a discrepancy, if a Waqf property belongs to Waqf or to the government. So it was in the original Amendment Act 2025. It was told that it will be decided by the collector. The collector will have the discretion to decide if property belongs to Waqf or it doesn't belong to Waqf. So Supreme Court was under the observation that a collector is also an executive. So it wouldn't be fair for an executive to actually take this role and decide if the property belongs to Waqf or to the government. Wherein the court said if there is a discrepancy, then they have to come over to the court to get it settled. So this is first point where the court has stayed. And the second thing is there was a clause which specified if somebody wants to donate to Waqf, the person has to be practicing Islam for the past 5 years at least. So this was another clause which the Supreme Court stated, saying that it is very impossible for somebody to even justify that they have been practicing a religion for the past 5 years because it is very personal and it is not easy for somebody to even justify it. So that was one clause the Supreme Court has stated. And more so importantly, which most of the confusion is happening, is with the representation in the Waqf board itself. So the Waqf board, as per the amendment, had a larger representation of non-Muslims in the state and in the center, wherein the Supreme Court intervened and it had given a clarification that only maximum of 4 non-Muslims will be allowed in the center and only 3 will be allowed in the state. So in the state, there are in total about 11 members. So out of 11, there will be 3 non-Muslim members. And in the center, there are 22 members, out of which 4 will be non-Muslim members. And most importantly, when it comes to the CEO, who heads the Waqf, so there is no specification that it has to be a Muslim, but the court prefers it to be a Muslim.
Okay, ma'am. Okay. So, in what capacity did you appear in the court, ma'am, regarding this Tiruchendurai village and all about? There are a lot of stories about the Tiruchendurai village, and that entire village was once claimed by Waqf. So, in what capacity did you appear in the SC, ma'am?
Yes. So I represented a petitioner from Tiruchendurai village. He is one Mr. JVC Sriram. So technically what had happened is there was an incident where a farmer wanted to dispose of his property in lieu to, doing the wedding for his daughter. So when he had to dispose of the property, that's when he had been told that he has to get an NOC from the Waqf board because his property belonged to Waqf. So that's when this entire, question of how can an Agraharam is technically a place in, which is in the vicinity of a temple, which will be exclusively taken over only by the priest or the families of the priest. So this place is technically an Agraharam where he wanted to dispose of the property. So wherein there were no Muslim settlements there as well. So that was a big challenge. So he had gone back. In the process, so there was so much of stress that he had to take, and then we lost him in a heart attack. So after which this issue actually, kind of gained a little more momentum, and a lot of people wanted to check their papers, in which very astonishingly 550 acre of the entire village was taken under Waqf on record, including a temple which is 1,500 year old, which claims to be older than that of the religion, Islamic religion itself. So, such being the case, then this became a point of discrepancy. There were a lot of leaders who had gone there. It had actually taken a political turn. And then it was discussed in the parliament, and it actually made a major trigger for this entire amendment to happen. So this person, JVC Piram, for whom we represent, has also, he has lost his space to the Waqf board in Tiruchendurai village. So most of it or all of it has been taken by Waqf by user. So we challenged this clause of Waqf by user in Supreme Court, for which Supreme Court has actually been inside of not using Waqf by user henceforth. So the amendment had taken out the section Waqf by user completely. So what is Waqf by user? Quickly to tell you, if I am in a rented accommodation and then I've been residing here for some 4-5 years, and today I can decide to call the Waqf and give it in written that this property can be donated to Waqf. So there is no need for it to be my own property. Neither the Waqf asks for the deed or the Waqf asks if the property belongs to me in person. So this is called Waqf by user. The person who's using the property has that capacity of actually giving, donating that property to Waqf. So which was actually very draconian. Imagine, because the property belongs to somebody else, and the Waqf also doesn't ask for the deed or the authority of the person to give this property to him. So that's how majority of 9 lakh properties that we claim to see that the government has actually given it on affidavit, that almost a large number of properties have been taken over, and maximum of it has been by Waqf by user. So this was the clause.
So here that owner will not come into place at all.
The owner may not even know in majority of the cases, unless and until he wants to dispose of the property. So the day when he wants to dispose of the property, so he will be taken aback that it is not his own property, it has already been donated to Waqf. So then the process is even more tedious for him, because he can't go to the court of law till the last amendment. But this amendment has actually given it a larger scope. So that person, the original owner of the property, can only go to the tribunal. The tribunal again is being taken care by the Waqf itself. So once if he doesn't get a favorable order in the tribunal, there is no appeal for him. So technically it is against the law of justice. So, but now after this amendment, even if it is an individual who has lost the property with the Waqf for any reason may it be, so then he can go up till the Supreme Court as a civil matter.
Okay. So what is the need for this amendment now? Has it been amended earlier? This Waqf Act, has it been amended earlier? What is the need actually?
It has been amended. It's been amended multiple times. 1923, 1950.
Because many people are saying that this government is doing this. There are a lot of speculations running around. They are doing it. They are targeting something like that. Has it been amended? That's the main question. So many people has.
Correct. See, Hari, obviously, I don't want to take a political stand here, but as a citizen and a law officer, I think it's my duty to make this clarification. See, first and foremost, what we should understand is the property that Waqf board has today is the third largest property in India, which is the first largest property is under Ministry of Railways. The second largest property belongs to the belongs to the defense, and the third largest property is with the Waqf. So technically, that's the quantum of wealth or land or whatever you may say we are talking about. First point. Secondly, it is that third largest property is only majorly focusing on one small community, which is the Islamic community. So such being the case, our Islamic brothers should have been the most richest or the most flourished group of people, having such a large amount of money for them. But very unfortunately, the Sachar committee also, if you could see, has specified the status in which the current 2012 status in which the Muslims have been is lesser than that of the SCs and STs. This is on record. They struggle for medication, they struggle for education, they struggle for minimum need, they struggle for having a dignified life. So if at all there is so much of property for this particular community and it is not reaching the grassroots level, then there is something which has to be channelized for sure. So
Of course.
what all of us should understand in this pretext is this entire effort is not for any other community, but it is for the Muslim community themselves. Once if things are going to be channelized and the funds are going to be transparent, imagine there is no accountability. They create their own laws. They are the legislative. They are the executive. They are the judiciary. No accountability. You tell me one entity entirely in the world where it can run a parallel administration. This is completely against any constitutional democracy. So this cannot be accepted at all. For some reasons, we've only been having amendments, but not this kind of major amendments where transparency comes into force. So now, if the fund flows, if things are understood, if this third largest landowners are going to ensure it is utilized for the welfare of a community, imagine, is it not better for that community? Aren't we struggling with them? Aren't we fighting so that their generations get a better opportunity? And on the second hand, the people who are whose properties have been taken over are only not a particular religion. They are from various religions. They are Hindus, they are Christians, they are Sikhs, they are Buddhists. There are so many other religions whose property has been taken over by the Waqf. So if such being the case, there has to be a secular way of settling out. And you tell me, and Supreme Court time and again in multiple judgments has clarified that Waqf is not a religious body. Waqf is an administrative body. And there were, discussions in the court as well, where the other side had taken stance that, will you have non-Hindus in, Tirupati Devasthanam, or will you have non-Hindus in Puri Jagannath Temple? Puri Jagannath Temple, Tirupati Devasthanam, they're all trust. Waqf is not a trust. It's a statute. It is a law. So it is passed by the parliament. So you tell me, can a law be passed in the parliament specifying with zero secularism? This is unconstitutional. It can't be acceptable. And all of this, which once it's channelized, will do a loads of goodwill only for that community which has been struggling for 78 years now.
Okay, ma'am. Point taken. So the properties that are already taken over by Waqf, can it be redeemed in any way now, ma'am? Is it possible?
Initially, as I told you, if it is an individual whose property is taken over by the Waqf, till about before the amendments, that the tribunal is the authority. Finally, it is the tribunal that decides. But now that you can go up to the Supreme Court to claim if your property belongs to you, and then you have the legal documents to justify it. On the other hand, so there are properties which are government-owned properties also taken by Waqf. For example, close to about 1,654 acres of Andhra Pradesh government land is taken over by Waqf. And then they go to the tribunal, then they go on an appeal. The government goes to tribunal, then the Andhra Pradesh government goes to the High Court, then the Andhra Pradesh government had to come up till the Supreme Court to get the stay done. So if this is the way a government has to go through in claiming its property, just not that, Ministry of Urban Housing and Urban, Ministry of Housing and Urban thing also has 108 properties under them. DDA, Delhi Development Authority, only DDA has 130 properties under, Waqf, which has been taken over by Waqf, and public domain has 123. And you can just make a list of it. We know there are a lot of our cases which actually will now come up to streamline once it is coming to the main judiciary. Up till when it isn't. And now for the ones, what is going to happen in the future? So any document, any donation or any Waqf that you would want to give it to the board has to be diligently done through documentation. One, it has to ensure that the property, first of all, belongs to you, which is the minimum. I think even for that we have taken so long, which is not very fair. So minimum is like it has to be your own property if you want to kind of give it to somebody. So that's the minimum that has come into place. Second thing, there has to be a sale deed. There has to be a deed that this person wants to give it to it. So now it's going to make it more transparent and more, there may be people who really want to give it to Waqf. So it will make it more genuine. Things are going to be more genuine. And what happens to people whose whose property is already with Waqf is it depends from the status that they are in right now. So imagine if it is in the tribunal, and then they can surely go for an appeal in the High Court and then come up till the Supreme Court. And this is where the Supreme Court has given directions to the state governments as well to, first of all, decide how you would want to sort out the pendings and how would you want to take the tribunal, how would you want to kind of, because every state has a different setup. If you see this UP Bihar belt, you have a lot of encroached monuments than compared to other parts of the country. So every state has its own setup and, the properties that has been taken over by Waqf. So every state has to come up with its own administrative ideas and the procedures in which it wants to take it further. So once that comes into picture, it gets even more clearer. But we can be rest assured that whoever property who's legitimately theirs will be getting, they have a ray of hope to getting it back.
Okay, ma'am. So my last question, actually the order which came a couple of days back is just an interim order. So what can we expect in the final verdict, ma'am, when it comes to the Supreme Court? Some clearance about it, because many people are guessing it may go in their favor, it may come in their favor. There are a lot of discussions about it. So what can we expect in the final order?
See, Hari, it will be in the favor of the welfare of the country. I can assure you that. I don't know whose favor that's going to go. Is it going to go for the favor of the government or opposite to the government? Doesn't matter. It's going to go for the goodwill of the country, for the goodwill of the people, and I am very sure of it. We all have to be rest assured of that. That's the first point. Second thing is, as I just mentioned in the beginning, there are only 3 sections that have been taken on stay. And the rest all has been accepted by Supreme Court, which technically means majorly the act has been accepted by Supreme Court. Secondly, when we talk about this act, it has just not happened in just few days, few months, just a couple of discussions or stuff like that. There was a complete joint parliamentary committee that was actually dedicated for this, where Jagadambika Palsa was the joint parliamentary committee chairman. So it was an 8-9 months long, extensive research, understanding, kind of hearing, going across India, length and breadth. So there's been a lot of inputs which has been put. There had been there had been members of parliament from the government and opposition. And so it has been a process in which they had made this amendment and submitted in the parliament. So once they submitted in the parliament, the oppositions had an issue that, no, we were not being heard well. It was actually one-sided. Then from this amendment that was placed in the parliament, 41 amendments have been made again. So there have been corrections, 41 corrections. So this is not the original Joint Parliamentary Committee report. When it went to the parliament, 41 corrections have been made. So they have taken, when there are 41 corrections, which technically means 41 of the points of the oppositions have been taken on record. So after which the bill has been passed. So, and then again, it comes to Supreme Court to be challenged, which most of us were expecting this would come over here. But I don't think there is any other scope wherein there may be a big flaw for the Supreme Court to probably think that, this is really unconstitutional. This is not going to go in the welfare of the community or the country at large, because rest of it has been, justified. Yes, in fact, when it comes to representation of Muslims, when it comes to like the collectors, or kind of when it comes to minimum practice of Islam, I think these are justified, because it's very difficult for anybody of us to kind of define how would you going to kind of go about this. But the rest all has not been touched, which technically means Supreme Court in principle has agreed to it. But still, as you rightly said, it's an interim stay. We have to look up to what Supreme Court has in mind. But personally, in my understanding, I feel it will be a final judgment that is unfavorable to the welfare of the country. No pro, no against government.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you so much for joining with us today and sharing valuable insights regarding the Waqf Amendment Act. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you, Hari. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.